Rob Parker burst onto the sports media scene in 1986, 30 years ago. Back then, Parker was a full-time staff sports writer for the Daily News in New York. At the time, it was the biggest newspaper in the United States. And while a lot has changed since then, one thing that hasn't changed is Parker's desire to outwork the competition, to change the landscape, to be a pioneer in the business, and mostly help those coming up behind him. If you don't know Rob Parker's journalism journey, here it is. Parker's 30 for 30 on his 30th anniversary. You'd have to look far and wide to find another sports writer who's evolved and adapted to an ever-changing media field. Back in the 80s, Parker was often criticized by his print brethren for spreading himself too thin, for doing more than one job at a time. In the last 10 years or so, multitasking dual jobs is commonplace, almost expected. Hence, in 2016, 30 years after taking his first job at the Wilkes-Barre Times-Leader, Parker is still blazing a trail, as relevant as he was in the 80s and 90s. In February 2016, Parker took a job at WXYZ TV in Detroit.
Welcome in on this Tuesday. Rob Parker here, you there. Let's kick it off with Getting Rob. My take on the three biggest sports stories tonight.
Parker became the 10 p.m. sports anchor Monday through Friday on 7 Action News, broadcast on TV 20 Detroit, a station WXYZ also owns. To no surprise, Parker wasn't just going to read scores and show highlights. No way, no how. Instead, Parker introduced a new concept. It's called Barbershop Sports.
TV 20 Barbershop, and look who we have here tonight. It's Eric Ebron, tight end from the Detroit Lions. And Eric, this is your third year coming up in the NFL. The last 2 years, how would you describe your first two? Were they disappointing, a work in progress, or it is what it is?
My last 2 seasons in the NFL was definitely a work in progress.
It's a mix of opinion, debate, and analysis.
We got Martin, Tico, Mike, and Cal. Last night, Steph Curry scored 51 points against the Magic. Some people are saying he's en route to one of the greatest single seasons by a player in NBA history. Martin, when it's all said and done this season, will it be the greatest season ever?
Oscar Robertson averages triple-double for the entire season. Come on.
Parker has done a reset on local news. WXYZ is the first station in the country to abandon the traditional sportscast. As you know, Parker wasn't a TV star, and we use that loosely. His first dream was to be a sports writer, Oscar Madison, in fact, from the old TV sitcom The Odd Couple. His newspaper career started in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. He was a high school sports writer straight out of Southern Connecticut State University. 5 months later, at 22, in 1986, Parker landed a job as a general assignment sports writer for the Daily News, his favorite paper growing up. It was a lifelong dream. He covered St. John's, the Nets, and the Knicks there. Dolores Thompson, the sports secretary, looked out for him. It was while covering the Nets he met his best buds in sports writing, downtown Cliff Brown and Curtis Bunn. Then it was off to Cincinnati.
Never wondered whatever became of me. I'm living on the air in Cincinnati.
Parker became the first African American to cover the Cincinnati Reds. Parker is also a BBWAA member and votes for the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's his most prized possession. Parker landed in Detroit in 1993.
Hello, Detroit.
Becoming the first black sports columnist in the Detroit Free Press's 161-year history.
Tuesday, March 9, 1993, 9:45 a.m.
Good morning, Rob. I want to welcome you to Detroit, and it's real good to have brother here writing for the Detroit Free Press sports section. I hope you're entitled to write on more than just sports. You obviously have a social consciousness as well as a sports awareness.
Back in New York, he was also the first African-American sports columnist at Newsday in 1995. Parker went back to Detroit in 1998 and worked at the Detroit News for 9 years. He is believed to be the only African-American to be a sports columnist for 2 different papers in the same major city.
There was the Millen Man March outside of a Lions-Bengals game.
That was funny. That was Rob Parker, the Millen Man March. I've told him that. It was very clever.
It was in Detroit that Parker also had a wonderful radio career. Parker was the first full-time sports columnist in Detroit to have a full-time radio show. He was the first on-air host hired at WDFN, Detroit's first all-sports station, in 1994. He and Mike Stone co-hosted The Odd Couple in the afternoon.
That request came from his boss. He said Parker was too negative. Deep down.
Parker spent 10 years on air doing Sports Night with Parker and the Man. The Man being Mark Wilson. The show is both fun and informative.
Parker and the Man. Hey Parker, don't be discouraged. The Man, he ain't so hard to understand.
Hey, this is Joe Dumars, and you're listening to Detroit's Late Night Talk King. Sports Night with Parker and the Man. Rob and Mark do it right every night, 10 to 1 on 97.1 FM Talk.
It was also in Detroit Parker started doing local TV on Channel 50 and made his mark on Sports Final Edition.
Come on, Katrina. NB, see you later.
That we honestly look at Sly Kroom, the offensive coordinator. We have the paper filled out. Please sign it and resign immediately. My moles are telling me that this is it. This will be Lloyd Carr's last year. Only Dorothy in total had a worse time away from home than the Pistons have had on this West Coast trip. Guys are now 0-4 as the season over.
Years later, Parker even got to be a fill-in sports anchor at WDIV Local 4. He had a working relationship at DIV for more than 20 years.
All right, controversy last night in Miami. Spurs coach Greg Popovich under heat, sending home Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and role player Danny Green to a commercial flight. Instead of playing them against the Heat, Commissioner David Stern was not happy, and moments ago fined them $250,000. I'm with Stern. I don't think it's right. It would be like turning on Local 4, looking to see Bernie do the sportscast, and Rob Parker being on. Wait a minute. Come on. Who wrote that? What? That's not right.
That's good stuff, Rob.
Great job.
You know what the Tigers said to the Oakland A's last night? NB, see you later. They're going to the ALCS. We'll discuss coming up next.
Parker also worked for Sports Channel in New York and the Fox News Channel.
With all due respect to D-Wade, I think Spo blew it. How do you view this, Rob?
You know what? I viewed it the same way that D-Wade saw it. Okay? I saw it the same way. I'm telling you, it wasn't Spoelstra's fault.
Parker hit the national level on TV in a big way at ESPN for 8 years, including 6 on First Take with Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith.
What are you doing here?
It's ESPN First Take, the hottest sports debate show in America.
That's good.
I'm Rob Parker.
You're not Rob Parker.
In for Jay Crawford.
You're not Jay Crawford.
Skip Bayless to my left, Stephen A. Smith to my right.
Parker is very opinionated. Hence, controversy found him a few times along the way. First with Lions coach Rod Marinelli, and then with Washington QB RG3.
Griffin tells the magazine he's not sure Parker should have been fired, saying, "There's some wrong in what he said, but there's some wrong in him losing his job as well. And I don't want people to think that that I'm trying to stick it to Rob Parker or that I'm happy he lost his job."
Parker was never left behind, though. He changed when the landscape changed. Later in his career, Parker took a buyout from the Detroit News and was the lone featured staff writer for Local 4's website, clickondetroit.com. He also wrote for ESPNNewYork.com. Currently, Parker writes for theshadowleague.com, based in New York City, and WXYZ.com, his TV station's website. In the end, the thing he's most proud of is the young journalists he helped mentor along the way. Rob never believed in just taking, but giving back. He's proud of the more than 30 people who've gone on to do big things in their career. That's right, 30 years in the sports business, and 30 helped along the way.